Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Ask a CMA. I'm your host, Jesse Long, and we're going to start a new series that is going to be based on important individuals in the Salvation Army. So we're going to be looking at people who were very colorful, who historically did a lot for the progression of the Salvation Army. And today, we're going to start by talking about somebody who did a lot for the progression of the Salvation Army in the United States, even though they were not American by birth. They faced a lot of hardship in their life, but were a wonderful example of Christ and his changing power, was a wonderful example of how to be a salvationist, and was a wonderful example of how we can really make a difference. The person we're talking about today, and we're starting off big, we're starting off with a very colorful personality. His name is Joseph Garbett. Now, I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's okay. Joseph Garbett, if you don't know that name, maybe you'll know his other name that he's probably more famous for. His other name is Joe The Turk. And that is going to be our focus this week. Joe The Turk gets his name because he was born in Turkey in 1860. Joseph Garbett, by the age of 14, was orphaned and decided to move to Constantinople. While he was there, he learned a trade. He learned how to make shoes. At the age of 17, Joseph Garbett decided to move to the United States. And this is where he first came in contact with the Salvation Army. In order to get to the United States, he first had to go through London, England. And if you see me looking down to my left, it's because I have my phone and my notes on there, so please forgive me for that. But while he was in London, he saw this group of people in uniforms marching down the streets, singing songs, bowing down and praying in front of people, praying with people. And they were doing this and showing love, even though they were being persecuted. While they marched down the streets of London, singing about the joy of Christ, they were met with hostility. And Joseph saw these people, and he became infatuated with them. Joseph still didn't speak English at this time. He had no idea what they were saying, but he could just see the love coming from them in the face of hatred. And this made an impression on Joseph. And he learned that this group was the Salvation Army. Soon after, Joseph moved to Boston, Massachusetts. While he was there, he learned the language and continued to try to put his trade of being a shoemaker into practice. He then decided that a better place for him would be San Francisco, California. And this is where Joseph both succeeded, but also met some really hard times. He moved to San Francisco, California, and he was able to open up his own shoe shop. But there was a problem. You see, his shoe shop was right next door to a saloon. In fact, Joseph had a hole in his wall that went straight into the saloon. And the bartender in the saloon would give Joseph drinks, beer and whiskey throughout the day through the hole in the wall. And Joseph soon found himself underneath the demon of addiction. Along with this, Joseph began to have another career, if you will. Joseph became a bar fighter. He was 6'2", 250 pounds. He was an imposing figure. And he used it. He would go to the different saloons looking for fights. And Joseph's life, even though he had a fairly successful shop, was starting to crumble because of his alcoholism and the violence that he searched for. Then one day he heard a commotion outside of his shop and outside of the saloon. And he looked outside to see these people in uniform singing songs of joy, praying for people. And once again, these people were facing persecution. In fact, there was one young lady, a young Salvationist, who a group of people were throwing mud in her face, were cursing her. And Joseph decided to take it upon himself to stop this persecution. And he went and he beat up all these men. The next time these people in uniform came down his street, outside of the saloon and outside of the shop, Joseph went outside, got down on his hands and his knees, and accepted Christ. Joseph became a member of the Salvation Army. After he became a member of the Salvation Army, Joseph actually became a bit of a doorman. He still had these violent tendencies. And he would go and he would stand outside the Salvation Army church doors. And anybody that came looking for trouble, Joseph would oblige them. And he became a bouncer for the Salvation Army. But then he felt a call. He felt a calling that he shouldn't be fighting with his fists, but instead with the Word of God. And he became a Salvation Army officer. While he was a Salvation Army officer, Joseph became famous for dressing in very elaborate uniform with lots of colors. He had a big umbrella with a picture of William Booth on it, with the colors of the Salvation Army flag, with light bulbs all over it that had different colors. He had a sword and a shield, a literal sword and a shield that he would carry around. And he would go and he would preach the gospel everywhere he went. Joseph was the first person to dress up like Santa Claus and ask for donations for the Salvation Army. But Joseph's life, even though it was filled with joy, still had hardship. Joseph was shot multiple times. He was stoned. He was beat up. He was arrested over 30 times for preaching the gospel. But even though he faced these hard times, Joseph didn't let it stand in the way of his calling. Instead, he used it. In fact, one time, whenever he was arrested and thrown in jail, he led all the other prisoners in singing church hymns, which they continued to do the very next day while he was on trial. He was acquitted. Joe the Turk died in 1937. He leaves us a legacy of having a bold faith, of not letting our past mistakes define who we are, but instead letting Christ's forgiveness define who we are. He sets an example for us to go and to not fear, but instead go in strength to preach the word to all those around us. Guys, this was our first episode in this new series. This will last a couple weeks, and we're going to talk about a few more people. I will tell you that next week, we're going to talk about the co-founder of the Salvation Army, Catherine Booth. So please join us as we do that. Guys, I hope y'all are staying safe. As always, God bless. Take care.